Hello, EmpowerHer Oasis. This is your girl Fee, and I'm back with another word of encouragement for today. And so let's get right into it, guys. And so I must say that my study this morning went really deep. And for those of you, if it's your first time watching me, one of the things that I truly believe in is tuning into the word before I tune into the world. In other words, I start my day off listening to the whispers of God before I listen to the shouts of the world. And so when I get up out of the bed in the morning, I normally set my alarm for an hour earlier than what I'm supposed to get up. My husband and I, we're empty nesters. And so there's not a lot of noise in the house anyway, but before he wakes up, I normally like to get up, sneak to the dining room table, have my cup of Java, and just open the Word of God and just see what God has to say to me for today. Because one thing I've learned, once you start your day off right, you normally can end your day right. And once you start your day off in a word, you are prepared for whatever the devil throws your way. I'm not saying just because you wake up and you read your Bible and you pray every morning that stuff is not going to come, but you're going to be better prepared for it. You're going to, because you have made a decision to be more proactive than reactive. One of the things when you're not rooted and grounded in the word, I keep saying world, in the word, you're more likely to react to a situation. But when you pray and when you study, you're proactive. And so you just handle situations differently than most people handle situations. And that's just the truth as it is in Jesus. But anyway, let me get right into it, because I feel like this, what I read this morning and what I want to share with you all is so relevant for 2025. And why do I say that? First, let me give you the backdrop and the cliff notes of what I read. So it's January, so I decided to start off in the New Testament reading the book of Matthew. So that's what I've been reading for the last 8 days, the book of Matthew. But this morning, God took me to the book of Nehemiah, and I'm like, okay, God, let's go with them. I'm supposed to be in Matthew. You want me to read Nehemiah? Let's see what Nehemiah has to say. So my goal this morning was just to read the first 2 chapters, and I end up reading the first 3 chapters. And man, I see why God led me to those chapters. So just to give you the cliff notes of those 3 chapters and just the backdrop of those 3 chapters, we're talking about our boy Nehemiah. And if y'all are familiar with Nehemiah, Nehemiah was a cupbearer to the king. He was also what you call one of the minor prophets in the Bible. You know, you got your major prophets in the Bible like John and Paul, but you have your minor prophets like Nehemiah, Jeremiah. You know, you have your minor prophets. And so our boy Nehemiah, okay, he back doing his cupbearer thing in the king's palace, living his best life, right? But being who he was at his core, because Nehemiah was a man of character. Nehemiah was what you call a selfless man. He wasn't always worried about himself, but he was also worried about his people. So Nehemiah, he decided to inquire about his ancestors, about his peeps, okay, who had just gotten out of slavery. So he talking to his boy Hananiah, and he was like, I know my people free. I know they got to be doing good. Give me an update. How they doing? So to his surprise, because you would think if somebody been in slavery and they have now been set free, that they're doing good. That's just like if you have a friend or a relative and they've been locked up in jail or they have been incarcerated, you would think, you know, incarceration, they'd be doing good. But this wasn't the case. And so Hananiah had to tell him, our people, they not doing good at all. As a matter of fact, they doing pretty bad. You know, it's almost a disgrace. He said the walls have been torn down in Jerusalem. And he said not only have the walls been torn down, bruh, these Negroes burned down the gates. They set them ablaze. Now, you may be saying, okay, they don't have no gates. They don't have no walls. Thousands of years ago, that meant a lot, because when you had walls around your territory, that means that your city was fortified. When you had gates, gates was a symbol of protection. Just like now our doors, our storm doors and our alarms or the locks on our doors, that's a sign of protection. Nobody really in 2025 want to be in their house and there's no locks. You know, we got the Ring cameras, we got the locks. Some of us got storm doors. So that's a sign for us of protection. It makes you feel safe in your home. And so for them, those gates, those walls around the city meant protection and safety for them. They no longer had that. And he said, so their people were disgraced and they were just in a bad place, in a bad way. And so Nehemiah, he was disturbed to hear this news. And again, being who he was at his core and being the selfless man he was like, this ain't good, bro. And so again, I told you he was a cupbearer to the king. So he decided to go to the king and let the king know what his problem was. When he encountered the king saw him sad, and he was like, this ain't how my boy normally looks. What's wrong, Nehemiah? And the same thing that I just told you, he told them what was going on with the Israelites. Because you have to think about, the Israelites was a strong community. These were God's chosen people. Now, were they in slavery? Absolutely, because that's what sin do. Sin will cause you to get yourself in some situations that you can't get yourself out of. And something that I tell my children all the time, you get to pick the sin, but you don't get to pick the consequences. You choose the sin, but God gonna choose the consequences. Israelites chose their sin, but they couldn't choose the consequences. So because of the sin of the nation, they were put into slavery. That was the consequences. And you have to think about before slavery, pre-slavery, this was a strong nation. They had their own king. They had their own army. They even had their own language. They spoke Hebrew. Okay, in other words, they had it going on, but they had lost all of that. They had their own identity. Okay, we were known as God's people, God's chosen people. They even lost their identity because of slavery. So they were just at a loss, and they was confused. And that's a message for somebody. Not only is the message you get to pick your sin, you don't pick the consequences, but your decisions can put you in some bad places. See, a lot of times what we want to do, we want to blame the devil for everything. Every time something happens, it's the devil. It's the devil attacking me, the devil attacking my marriage, the devil attacking my kids, the devil attacking me on my job, the devil. And I'm not saying that the devil don't play his part 85% of the time, but if we have an honest conversation with ourselves in 2025, a lot of it ain't the devil, sis. A lot of it is decisions, bro. A lot of it is not the devil. It is the decisions that we make. And I'm just keeping it 100. But anyway, so he goes on and he tell the king what's going on. And so the king decides to grant him favor and let him go back and help his people. And so if I had to entitle this message, and the reason I told you when I read this story, and I would admonish you all to go read Nehemiah chapters 1, 2, and 3, because it would bless your soul. When you go back and read it, if I had to title this encouragement for the day, it would be, I survived, but I'm still going through hell. Yeah, I survived what I went through in 2024. But in 2025, I'm still going through hell. Because that's basically what Hananiah was telling Nehemiah. Yeah, our people, they survived slavery. But here they are out of slavery and they still going through hell. Can anybody relate to me? Because if you can relate, leave something down in the comments if you can relate. I survived 2024. And it's just the first beginning of January 2025. And I'm still going through hell. I'm still going through problems in my marriage. I'm still going through on my job. My kids still acting cuckoo crazy. I'm still getting bullied at school. I'm still going through in my finances. Yeah, it's a new year, sis. But I'm still having the same old problems that I had last year. And so I survived, but I'm still going through hell. Can anybody relate to what I'm saying? And so I wrote down just 5 quick points that I want to share with you for today's encouragement, because Nehemiah left a blueprint. See, that's the beauty of the Bible. The Bible ain't just about some old stories to tell, but they are life lessons that we can apply to our lives to help us. And so these are the 5 things that I wrote down about Nehemiah, because, you know, of course, we like to act like everything is okay. That's why y'all see me post sometimes and say, hey, check on your strong friends. Check on the nurses at the bedside. Check on those people who done got a little bit quiet. Check on them, because oftentimes, especially strong people, Sometimes, we always want to act like everything is okay because everybody's so used to us being strong. Everybody's so used to coming to us with their problems. We don't want to go to them with our problems. We like to dress up our pain. We like to put on our lashes, even though we dying inside. We put on our Dolce & Gabbana perfume and smell good, but inside our heart stinks. We like to put on our high heel shoes and we like to look the look, walk the walk, and talk the talk. But inside, if we honest with ourselves, we are drowning. Some of us, we're drowning in our own tears. We're drowning in our own pain. And we don't know what to do. We don't know what to do. We survived, but we still going through hell. So Nehemiah left on record for us. And it was funny because y'all know I'm always relating nursing to real life because, that's what I do. That's not who I am, but that's what I do, a nurse. And so when I looked at the steps that Nehemiah took, it was really the nursing process. It was really the nursing process. The nursing process, you all, is a 5-step process. Let me tell you what the 5 steps are. You assess the situation, right? Once you assess the situation, and of course, assessing the situation, you have to get your subjective data, what people said or what the patient said, and your objective data, things you see for yourself, like the vital signs, the blood pressure, the temp, okay? And maybe what the patient says, subjective data, but also what you assess as a nurse, right? And then the second thing is a diagnosis. In other words, a diagnosis is what the problem is. Okay, what the problem is. If I go assess my refrigerator, I may make a diagnosis like we ain't got no groceries in there. Okay, and then once we come up with the diagnosis, then we have to come up with a plan. So how do I plan to fix the problem that I came up with? And then once I come up with the plan, I have to implement the plan. Just like if I come up with, hey, I'm finna make a cake and I'm missing some eggs, the plan may be to go to the grocery store and get some eggs first. And then E is to go back and evaluate and see what I did. Did it work? And when I read this, I'm like, this is the nursing process. When I read what Nehemiah did. So what did Nehemiah do first? What was the first step that Nehemiah take? So the first thing he did was, after he heard his boy Hananiah, he talked to the king because he like, I got to go see for myself how my people doing. I got my subjective data. But one thing we learn as nurses, we can't just take what the patient say. We got to collect our own data. And so what they say should match up with what we assess. So he had heard what Hananiah said, subjective data. Okay, now let's see if my objective data, what I see for myself, gonna match up with what he said. So after he got permission from the king, he went and he assessed the situation for himself. Y'all, when he went, that place was so destroyed where they had tore down the walls. He can barely go through the gate and barely assess the situation. That's how bad the area that they were living in was. And then not only that, he saw a people who was confused with no guidance. A confused people. It's like sheep looking for a shepherd. Have y'all ever just seen sheep out in the pasture? They just as lost as a goose. And that's why they need a shepherd to lead them and to guide them, right? Because they don't know what to do. And so that's what he found. His people like lost sheep, just confused and didn't know what to do. I want you to put a pin break right there for a second. Because for those of us who are parents, we got to do a better job of leading and guiding our children in the right direction. See, one of the things that we have taught our kids how to do, we have taught them how to do drama, but we haven't taught them how to do life. We have taught them how to do drama, but we haven't taught them how to do life. Our kids, they live in a house with mama's mess and daddy's devil. They hear the arguing, the fussing, the confusion. And when I tell you, when you come up on a young person, oh, they got some clap back for you. Do you hear me? And they are ready to hit you on sight. Do you hear me? So they know how to do drama, but they don't have real life skills. You have young people don't even know how to write a signature, who don't even know how to balance a checking account, who don't know how it is to have a face-to-face conversation because they so into this technology now. They don't know what conflict resolution even looks like. Probably don't even know what it means, because as parents, we trying to buy them stuff. We're exposing them to mess, but we're not teaching them how to do life, how to be productive citizens, how to go for a job interview, how to dress for a job interview. You got young people coming up, showing up in baggy jeans for job interview because nobody taught them how to do life. And then we don't teach them how to do life, and then we send them out into this world expecting that they know how to do life, something we never taught them to do. And then when they fail flat on their face, we be like, what you doing? Because you know, we quick, especially in our community like this and not like this. What are you doing? And we wonder why they fought, because we ain't taught them nothing. This ain't got nothing to do with Nehemiah. This is just a pause break that I'm taking. We have not taught them how to do life. And then we so quick to not teach them how to do life. And then at 18, we expect them to get out of our house with no life skills. But you grown now, you 18, get out. Just because you 18 don't mean you grown. It don't mean you can make adult decisions. That's that slave mentality, because, you know, so many people grew up having so many kids that they couldn't take care of them. So they was ready for kids to get out the house at 18. There will be one financial burden off their back. But send your kids out when they're ready. That don't mean whether they're 18 or 28 or 38. Make sure they know how to do life before they leave your home. Okay, back to Nehemiah, because I'm going to go on and on with that. So the 5 steps that Nehemiah took, right? So the first step he did, he assessed. And I told y'all, everything was in a mess. And just like Hananiah told him, the people were complaining and wallowing. And they were just having their own personal pity party when he got there. Signs and symptoms. You saw the people murmuring and complaining and having a pity party. So what his objective data was the same thing as Hananiah's subjective data. The people were in trouble, basically, and they didn't know what to do. And so the second thing he did of the process was he had to make a diagnosis. What's going on with my people? They are confused, without direction. Go read it for yourself. That was the diagnosis he came up with. Like, these people are in trouble, but they so confused and so lost, they don't even know where to begin to start. They don't even know how to begin to build a wall, how to fortify the city. They don't even know the first step to take. So he made a diagnosis that they had self-pity going on, they was confused, and they was in a state of murmuring and complaining. So that was his diagnosis. So the third thing he did to fix the problem, and these steps I'm giving you is the same thing we got to do. We got to assess our situation. We got to come up with what the problem is, okay? And then we got to make a plan to fix it. Okay, so the third step is the plan of how to fix the problem. So just like if you're making a cake, you say, well, I need to go get some flour, eggs, and milk. So it's easy to sit there and analyze and scrutinize what's going on. But even if you come up with the plan, you all, the hardest step of it all is not the planning, it's the fourth step, which is implementation. So he had to come up with the plan. How am I going to go get wood to build the gates? Who's going to help me build the gates? What's going to be the time frame? He came up with the plan to fortify this city so these people can first feel a sense of safety. When you're trying to help somebody, the first thing you need to do, you need to meet their physical needs before you start meeting their spiritual needs. Somebody come to you and say, oh, I'm hungry. You don't say, sis, I'm going to pray for you. No, let me get you some 6-piece nugget and some fries, and then I'll pray for you. Because guess what? They ain't even trying to hear your prayer when they stomach growling. So a lot of times we as Christians, we want to try to meet the spiritual needs. We want to pray. We want to give them a Bible study. But you haven't met the physical. I'm hungry. My lights turn off. I need a ride. How about meeting the physical before you meet the spiritual needs? So he realized, before I meet these people's spiritual needs, I got to meet the physical. Their walls are torn down. They don't feel safe. They confused. So he made a plan of how to go get the lumber. He asked the king to write a letter to the gatekeeper so that he can get wood to start rebuilding the walls. He made a plan of who was going to help him rebuild the wall and a time frame it was going to take to rebuild the wall. So he came up with the plan. And then the fourth step he did was he implemented exactly what he said he was going to do. And that's what we keep falling short at. A lot of times we find ourselves in the situations we're in because we're making the same decisions over and over and over again. And we expecting different results. But guess what? You're not going to get no different results with the same things. Making the same silly decisions, doing the same thing, don't equal the same results. It was funny that about 10 years ago, my husband and I went to counseling. And every time we would have an argument, we would do the same thing. We would overtalk each other, so he never heard me, I never heard him. And it would just lead into a screaming match, right? We did that year after year after year, until one day we decided to go to counseling, and the man told us, he said, that's mental retardation. Nobody ever said, let me stop and listen and see what the other person's saying because they may have a valid point. Nobody decided to practice attentive listening. No, because we hadn't been taught that. I know for me, I hadn't been taught that. I didn't grow up in a house where my mom really taught me how to do life, if I'm being honest. And I love my mama dearly. But if we were just doing the same thing, but we was expecting our marriage to get better. Y'all see what I'm saying? It wasn't until we decided to get uncomfortable to get to a place of comfort. But we had to get uncomfortable first, and doing something out of your comfort zone is uncomfortable, because every time you get mad, and if you used to screaming and cussing and arguing, and then now you have to sit and listen to the other person, and you have to not only listen, attentively listen, and then you have to say what I understood you to say was, and then you can't use the word you. We had to use the word the way that made me feel is, because see, one thing about the way you made me feel, people can't argue with how you feel. Now, if you say you did this and you did this, they can argue and say, no, I didn't do that. But if you said, when this happened, this is how it made me feel, nobody can argue with how you feel. So it's learning how to communicate, effective communication, because all communication ain't effective, right? I know I keep going off on tangent. Back to Nehemiah. So implementation. So he met their physical needs, right? He prayed for them too, but he met their physical needs first. So, and so he began to build the walls, implementation. And that's where we fall short. That's what I was trying to say. I got thrown off on the tangent. That's where we fall short. Because so many times we come up with a plan. Like, I'm sure January the 1st, everybody made a plan. I'm going to the gym, right? I'm going to eat better, right? My marriage going to be better. But we ain't even stepped out the door to go to the gym. We didn't go to the grocery store and buy no healthy foods. We talking about our marriage gonna be better. We ain't decided to go get no counseling. Or you probably said, I'm gonna be a better person. You ain't went try to get no personal counseling. You ain't read no self-help book. You ain't did nothing different than you did in 24, but you think in 2025 gonna be better. You ain't went to counseling with your kids, but you expecting them to be better. Instead of putting them in counseling and seeing what's going on with them. Because a lot of our kids are going through some stuff, y'all. I'm trying to tell you. And they need counseling too. Why? Because they dealing with mama's mess and daddy's devil. Anyway, that's a whole nother story. But it's easy to say I'm going to do something. Like me and my daughter Taya, her and I decided on the 1st, we was going to start eating better. We was going to step under our 1,200 calories. That was the plan. But ask me what the implementation looking like. Y'all see where I'm going? So in order to be healthier this year, to be down the 50 pounds, I got to do some things different. All the things that I planned in 2024 and the beginning of 2025, now it's implementation time. It's beast mode time. It's time to get this thing right before we get left. It's just what it is. So we have to implement, and that's what he did. And then the next thing was, after implementation, he got the tools, he got the resources, and then he rebuilt the wall. Nehemiah rebuilt the wall, is what he did. And so, of course, the evaluation, he came back in and he looked at his work to make sure that they were fortified, that the people were safe. It's a powerful story when you read it, you all. But again, I survived, but I'm going through hell. So how can you get out of your personal hell? Make a personal decision to make some changes. Make a personal decision to assess yourself or the situation you're in, whether it be your job, whether it be your marriage, whether it be your finances. If you're going through financially, assess your situation. See what things that I don't have to spend. Because if we look through our checking accounts, we can see some things we don't have to spend money on in 2025. Like, I've already made a decision. I'm not giving Amazon not one dime this year. Because I've been giving them too much of my money over the last 5 years. Half of my income go to Amazon. And for what? Just to have a house full of mess that I really don't need. So sometimes when you assess the situation, you can make a clear diagnosis of what the problem is. So whatever that looks like for you, sis, whether it's a compulsive Amazon shopper like me, whether you having problems with your child, and because we feel like we don't have to have a sit down and have a conversation. They got opinions too. They got feelings too. Or whether you going through on your job, have you thought about getting another job? Have you thought about starting a business? Or the person you having a problem on the job with, instead of walking past them, ignoring them every day, have you decided to have a conversation with them? Is it home? Is it church? Have you decided to change your churches? It's something about church people who grow up in churches from kids. They act like they can't leave that church. You know you're not growing. You know it's not conducive for your spiritual growth, but for some reason we will not leave, because that's where my mom and my grandmama and my great-grandmama went to church at. And the pastor had got the same sermon he had in 1972. And you know you're not growing spiritually in that church. Leave. Again, make a decision. Sometimes it ain't the devil, it's just our decisions to just do something different. And guess what? When we do something different, we're going to have different results. So again, sis, I admonish you, bruh, whoever I'm talking to, male or female, assess your situation. Come up with what the problem is. Come up with a clear, specific plan of what you're going to do to solve that problem or to do things differently. And after you do that, then implementation, like I said, that's the step we get lost at. Implement that plan. If you say you're going to eat 1,200 calories a day, go eat 1,200 calories a day. If you say you're going to counseling, go to counseling. If you say you're going to start that business, let's get it rolling. Whatever you say, implement, and then go evaluate. And part of the evaluation, you may say, hey, I need to tweak some things. Because just because you evaluate don't mean that it went out just like you planned for it to be. That's the beauty of the message that I told you last week about being flexible. You may have to make some tweaks and changes and see what can I adjust. But I'm telling you, you can apply this 5-step process. And I don't even call it the nursing process no more. I just call it the problem-solving process now. And you can use this not only to survive in 2025, but to thrive in 2025. Yeah, you survive and you going through hell, sis or bruh, but you don't have to keep going through hell. You don't have to keep going down that Damascus road. You don't have to stay in the lion's den. You don't have to keep going through that Red Sea experience. You can walk on dry ground. God can shut the devil's mouth. He can open your blinded eyes to what you need to see. Just trust the process. I gave you the 5 steps of the process. Just trust the process. That's all I have. So I want to say, as I always say, be blessed and be empowered.